Thank you, Josh. So here we are live in Edison, and I'm thrilled to have one of our true legends in fly tying, Mr. Pop Flies himself, Bob Popovics. Bob, thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure.
For those who don't know, you've been tying since 1970, almost 50 years.
True. But I was 21 years old.
We're aging you here, Bob.
No,
I'm sorry.
You. That's all right.
And for those who don't know, you're the author of two revolutionary books, Pop Flies, which came out in 2001, and then Fly Design, which is your recent book, 2016. You're also a local restaurateur for a nice restaurant.
Yes, sir.
In the New Jersey area. So we want to hear all about your restaurant as well. We got tons to discover. We have tons to cover. Let's start at the beginning, though. Where did you grow up, Bob?
Grew up in the city of Trenton, about one block from the Delaware River, and spent a lot of time either playing baseball or fishing. So
that's a big baseball area.
Oh yeah, good. Trenton's got quite a history.
And you grew up a Yankees fan?
Yankees fan, Phillies fan, and then later a Mets fan too. So,
okay.
But I just like the game itself.
The game. Okay. Well, I'm not going to tell you which team I root for.
All right. But I'm not asking.
But we're rivals. Let's just say that. You were there in the saltwater fly tying revolution.
Yeah, it could be easily said that. It was, it really was, I wouldn't say it was archaic at the time, but it hadn't really moved along very much. When I first got there, it was easy to follow. There was no communication that was really key to any kind of growth. You would never know. If somebody was doing something hundreds of miles away, you would never know it. There was no publications to speak of. No one featured, saltwater fly fishing or fly tying at all. Even Saltwater Sportsman magazine would rarely have any kind of an article having to do with that. So things came slow only because, first off, it didn't get the sport to enough of people to get more minds involved. It just was not happening. So when I came in, I know for myself, my own personal experience was, I'll tell you, one was I was very excited. Once I got into it, I really kind of liked it a lot. And I'm a beach, I got sand between my toes all the time because that's where I prefer to be. I'm a surf fisherman. But I was trying to get into it, and then, of course, bluefish is tailor-made for fly fishing. And,
sure.
So I like to get on the beach, and then next thing you know, I'm get some opportunity here to catch some fish, make a cast, you hook up with a bluefish. If it wasn't one fish, it might have been at no more than two. The fly was then totally destroyed. And it would happen again. So by the time I got another fly on, the fish had moved down the beach. Now I'm walking. I don't have a four-wheel drive yet at all. So I was like, doggone it. Now that's all. What I got, one fish, two fish, and now I got to, hopefully I can get chopped with them again or something. So I said, I come back to the tackle store and I would, just have a conversation over coffee or maybe a breakfast. You say, the guys would say, that's fly fishing for bluefish. That's what you have to expect.
Right.
I don't know, man. There's got to be a better way.
Yeah. So
then I started to notice that my flies I was using were blondes. And I used to use epoxy on the thread of the head. Well, that was always intact. So I said, but if I took that epoxy and went the whole length of the shank, let's see what I would get. That would have that fly more durable. Well, that was the birth of the surf candy. And that was in the early 70s, 71, 72 maybe.
Okay.
So that was a big movement forward.
And nobody had invented the surf candy before?
No.
You're the originator?
Yes, sir.
The surf candy. So. I get a couple of those in my box.
Oh, yeah. So then next time, they were very crude. They were just made out of bucktail. There was no real definition to them. It was just a sturdy fly. Mm-hmm. And then different materials. I would try different things. Tried polar bear hair, which I had a little bit of. And then as I would put epoxy on that, then I could see through the fly. Mm-hmm. More natural. Still crude, but still now I can start to get something towards more realistic look to that imitation baitfish I was making. So then I started putting silver flash underneath, accentuate a little bit more. Started putting eyes on it and put a tail on it, a stripe through it. This is like a long time period. It just didn't happen all together at the same time. One went, one started, and then another. I'd add another piece to it, another piece to it, another piece to it, and then finally now he got to the spot where it was called surf candy.
The surf candy. Well, back in the early 70s, you started fly tying. How did that happen? Like all of a sudden you just...
Well, I had been fly fishing. A good friend of mine, Butch Colvin, that got me started in it. And he also was a hockey player. So on my birthday, he said, well, we're going to come on over. He said, I want to, get you involved with the hockey. And it was a Rangers-Bruins game.
Oh.
Yeah, I figured I'd go Boston. So between that, he knocks on the door, which I thought was unusual as he come over to the house because he would just walk in. Well, I go to the door, and it was him, and he had a cardboard flat, standing at the door with a vise, some tails, and some tools to tie a fly with.
Yep.
I said, come on, Butch, I can't do that. Look at these hands. I said, I'd never be able to make them.
And you
you
never really heard about fly tying too much at that point.
Well, no, I knew of it, but I didn't think I would ever do it.
Right.
So he said, you're going to learn between the periods. So then I went in there, and sure enough, between the periods, I can still remember chasing the thread on the shank of the hook till I finally caught it.
Okay.
And I still remember that instant.
You caught it.
That satisfaction where the thread tension locked in so that I can then go ahead and tie material on. Because before in the beginning, I just wrap and it would just keep on spinning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that way I started to realize, I said, I'm going to enjoy this. And that's how I started.
So you're a young man, early 20s, and you just started...
Yeah, I was 22 then, I guess.
Chasing some fish, and were you in school? Were you college? Or?
No, I was in the Marine Corps. I had just come back from Vietnam.
Oh, is that right?
Yep. And
thank you for your service.
My pleasure. But it was just one of them things. It just all fell into place. And
did you have career aspirations at that time, or what were you thinking? Were you going to do with your life?
No, I was working for my father at the restaurant.
Okay.
And I had been there. I opened it in 1966, 2 weeks out of high school, with my mother while he was in the hospital. So I stayed there with him through after high school, and then I went into the Marine Corps. Then even when I was stationed in Camp Lejeune before going to Nam, I used to come home on weekends to work in the restaurant.
Is the restaurant the same location it was in
Same place. So it's 53 years now.
Wow. What's the name of it?
Shady Rest in Bayville, New Jersey.
Okay. And what are the specialties?
Well, anywhere from pizza to ribs to nachos to steaks and chops, and run the whole gamut.
I
Seafood,
hear good things about the ribs.
Oysters, clams, yeah. It's good stuff, man.
Ben Farimsky wants to know what your favorite dish at the restaurant is.
Fra Diavolo sauce. Anything with Fra Diavolo sauce on it.
You've got Fra Diavolo?
From pizza to pastas to seafood, yeah. It's out of this world.
Do you have like, what do they call it? Fish of the sea, Fra Diavolo? What do they call that?
Soup de pêche?
Yeah, soup de pêche.
Yeah, well, you got that, but we don't call it
soup
Italian.
de pêche.
We're not an Italian restaurant.
Oh, come on.
It's an American restaurant.
Okay.
All right. So, no, but anything with Fra Diavolo sauce on it, man.
I
like
want
it.
a little fish of the sea Fra Diavolo.
Yeah,
I'm coming.
I'll tell you, if you ever tried a Fra Diavolo pizza, that'll knock your socks off.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I'm coming.
It's a perfect sauce for a pizza.
Why don't we get everybody here at the show?
Yeah.
And we'll all go over to Shady's?
Yeah, please. We better call.
Well, that's great. So you're working for your dad.
Right. And then, so I stayed with him. I figured I might have been a state trooper or something like that because they were really courting guys coming back from Nam quite a bit. But then I just said, no, I'm going to stay with my father till he decides what he wanted to do. So when he said he was finished, I said, well, good. I'm ready to go. I want to do it.
Yeah.
So then I bought it from him.
Okay.
And then I changed it. And then a few years later, after I bought it in 78, in 85, I bought a liquor license. So then it's changed everything ever since. So now it's still the same size, except it has an outside seating and a rose garden setting. And there's a patio bar. It's really, really quite unique. Very tiny, but very, very unique. And it's just my wife and I. You know, we have my niece and my sister helping, my nephew helping too. But it's my wife and I. We own it. She does all of the cooking. It's all her recipes and the way she cooks. And we just try to present it in the best way we can. That's all.
So it's a true labor of love, a family labor of love.
It is. So
Mama's cooking.
Oh, yeah. It's not easy.
No, sure. Well, good. And so there you are. You're in your 20s. You're working at the restaurant. You finally bought the restaurant, but you're diving into the fly fishing revolution there in the salt.
Yeah, soon after I got married, I remember saying to my wife one time, I said, I'm getting pulled by the fly fishing industry kind of, and it may take me away from more of our togetherness. And I said, is that okay? She said, you have to do that. This is what you need to do. So we made that agreement, and I did it. And, we'll be married 50 years in 3 more years. So.
Wow, that is awesome. Congratulations. Yeah. And you have an incredibly supportive wife, in the restaurant and for your fly fishing.
But everything I've ever done, she's always been right on my side. So.
And to say you need to do that you know that you're with the right one when they're allowing you to chase your passion.
It's just exactly the way she describes it, too.
That's cool. Well, what was it about that sand between your feet and then kind of uncovering how to work that surf candy and how to go with that next material?
Well, I'll tell you,
what was that?
Well, one of the things that when we're talking about the changes back when I got started, another thing, a wall that was there was there were no big flies.
Okay.
And again, it just wasn't done. Nobody made them. There were no real good synthetics. There were no real long feathers to find anywhere locally. I don't know about anywhere else, but we'd never seen anything longer than probably 4 inches in a fly.
Okay.
So I come up with an idea. I said, well, what about these big bunker that these guys are snagging and live lining? So for the fly guy, we're not catching any big bass. These guys are, but we're not.
Right.
So we're trying to get more people in, and then all of a sudden, they want to get all these big bass. Well, we needed flies that would help imitate that. That's the only way that's going to work. So I had come up with an idea where I figured I'll put 2 vices together, side by side, and string it with monofilament, and to make a larger fly. And this is the one here.
That's the original.
That's the original.
And so for our friends who are watching on
that's
the internet,
the fly
that's
right
the
there.
big bunker fly.
Yep.
11 inches long.
Yep.
And at the time, it was tied 30 years ago, so you can add another
tied longer
15 years on top of that, right?
That's almost 50 years old, this fly.
Unbelievable.
This is tied in 71.
That was tied in 1971. Look at the size of that fly.
Yep. So
today that's
it's older than you are.
What's about? That's about my birthday.
But then nowadays you can see there was a passion started there for bigger flies.
Right.
And there was a technique that I taught myself to tie on monofilament. So then I got used to it. So years later, as you go now into fly design, the bigger thing now is these bigger flies, the big hollow flies and stuff. So it was a fly called the Beast.
The
and that's
Beast.
This. So this actually has its roots in this fly here.
Okay.
Okay, because again, I'm using monofilament to get this extension to make the fly as big as I wanted it.
And move.
It moves beautiful, yeah. But there's also the first ones that I made. There's always an evolution. Any kind of design always evolves. It's never done when you first do it. It takes time for it to evolve, to get all the kinks out, the improvements to be made.
Like a podcast.
Yep. So what the first ones of these that were made were very thick, very big, hard to cast, a lot of material to tie. It took a long time. So all these barriers had to be broken down. You had to refine the technique. So that's what you see now. This is a refined beast. It's not like the first one so much. Mm-hmm. It's like the first one I can make 4 or 5 out of this.
Right.
Of these out of what I used in the first one.
So you keep kind of tweaking it and making it better, improving it.
No fly design is ever done.
Well, this is not my original copy of Pop Flies. I have the original hardback from 2001. I got it then.
All right.
And at that time, I just remembered being at the shows, and there was like a buzz about Pop Flies. Pop Flies created a buzz like I've never heard any other book do before.
When we signed the books, we were given an hour for author's booth, and we were already past our second hour. The line went from the tying table, the author's booth table, all the way across to where the casting pond was, right up through the aisles. There was a line there for a long time, and that was at the Somerset show. So,
I remember this, Bob, and it was like an incredible buzz. Pop Flies, this revolutionary book.
We had to give way, so because we were holding everybody else's time.
You got to sign a couple books. What are you going to do?
There was a buzz for that.
There was a buzz. And what was it? Was it the epoxy or the surf candy?
It probably was there, but see, it's not just epoxy in that book. There is also a talk of bigger flies. There's also the silicones.
The silicone with the lip.
Yep, and then the lip, that pop lip. So that was all there. You can see even here again. Here's the big flies. And it went through. There's quite a bit. It was a departure from the traditional style kind of saltwater flies at the time, or before that. So that was the first time it was put into print. But don't forget, that book took, I think, 6 years to make it.
Is that right?
So it's, these things that were finally put in print had been around
You were using
for a long
them and
time.
tweaking them.
And don't forget, like the surf candy was back in the 70s, but there was no place to put it, no publications to do that. So now they had to wait until all the sports started to grow together, and then there was a searching for new ideas, searching for more information, facilitated the making of that book.
How did you start using epoxy? Like, what gave you the idea? Did somebody
epoxy
talk to you about it?
I had it on my bench because we used to make Kaboom Boom poppers that were designed by Cap Colvin.
Okay.
And they would use regular airplane glue to begin, if I recall. And then we started going over to epoxy because it was easier. And I can still remember when you put the hole in the bottom of the cork and you filled it with epoxy, you wanted to make sure that when that hook went through that you would take these perch floats and cut at a slight angle.
Okay.
So you have a point top somewhere. You have a center, a top. So that when the hook goes in the bottom, that center had to be directly above the eye of the hook. So we used to take that, put it in. You see the epoxy, a lot of it would come out. And we'd take a wooden toothpick, dip it in epoxy, and then break it one side. Just break it once, stick it in the hole, and then break it the other way. And it would wedge in there and steady that hook in the exact spot it needed to be in relationship to that point of that on top. So that was on my desk at the time, and then you would know how hard it was. Mm-hmm. And then I would just, instead of use head cement on my blondes, I used to put it on the thread of the head. And then I noticed as the bluefish eat them up, that always stayed solid. So there was
So you knew you had something there.
And guys would coat things with epoxy like balsa wood or whatever, but it was just a coating. Where I used epoxy was within the fibers and then keep the fibers straight behind. I didn't want to lash it down because it made a dip and then another explosion at the bend of the hook. That wasn't what I was looking for. I was looking for a more continuous shape to where it goes now. It has that fish shape. It has that small fish shape now all these years later.
So that was the big explosion there with the epoxy.
That was a big.
and the silicone.
Then people, again, for communication purposes, it was something that they can put on their desk, and it was about how to do it.
Right.
How do I use it? They knew all about it because it had been around for a while now, all these years later, but they didn't have that much documentation as to where and how. So that's what that book did.
So it gave the where and how to use all that.
Yes, so that's
and
why
kinda
it became.
Boom!
Yeah, I would have to say, yeah.
And then have you seen that epoxy move into what people are doing now with resins?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same fly, just a different material to make it hard. Now that's what's nice. Epoxy would yellow. Have to keep it out of the sun. We had all different ways of trying to, maximize the time or the life of a surf candy by just making blanks, and then all of a sudden, before you start to use them, you would just take them out of the drawer or whatever, and you would put the epoxy on it, and then you had at least another year and a half, and you keep it out of the sun and all that. But
are you using resins now?
Now you use the resins. Oh yeah, it's much easier. It sets when you want it. Where 5-minute epoxy, you had a certain time frame, a restricted time frame.
You had a window.
You better be ready, and when it's ready. So that eliminates the acrylics. Pretty much eliminate that.
Do you have a specific resin that you like to use, or do you just use
I
them all?
prefer Tough Fly.
Tough Fly.
Yeah, only because it's not a UV cure light, and where UV has been found to be a little more dangerous
For the eyes.
Eyes for hands. So I stay away. It's the only acrylic option you have. Everything else is UV.
Okay.
But this is the only one that's blue light.
Well, I'm glad I brought that up. Yeah, because I wanted to hear different opinions.
See, and the thing where you have to worry about, a lot of men will have, women will have children at their home, and they're going to watch them tie flies. They sit at a table at that perfect length, and you're going like this. With the UV light, you're going right in their eyes because the eye cannot see UV light. So it doesn't constrict, it doesn't protect itself. It's like saying, go ahead, keep on doing it. And UV damage is cumulative. So once you're exposed, it stays. You get more, it gets more on there and more and more and more over the years.
They say to use glasses.
You got it. You have to use it. And when the other guys were coming out, while Tough Fleyes led the way, the other guys were coming out, and they rebucked. They rebuted. They didn't want any part of telling people to wear protective stuff. Tough Fly, even though it's a blue light, they came right out at the beginning with a disclaimer: don't look directly into it. And they also had an orange shield.
Okay.
So the new ones are not. So I don't know where that stands now, but again, I can just say you have a choice, only one choice, to have an acrylic, like your acrylic that's not UV.
How long does it take to cure?
Seconds.
Okay.
Yep. And the only thing they always say, well, then you have to wipe it off. I wipe it off with alcohol, any kind of tacky residue. That's not a problem.
Yep.
Working with epoxy all those years, let me tell you, that is nothing compared to having to wait with epoxy. So it's not a problem.
I want to talk about your co-author here in the book, Ed Jaworowski.
Jaworowski. Ed Jaworowski.
Jaworowski.
The W's are like a V.
Okay, Jaworowski. So Lefty says about Ed that he's one of the most talented men he ever knew, because anybody that can sing opera, drink beer with the guys on the beach, and then teach Latin is a person that he needs to know.
That's Ed. Ed's like my big brother, and I am probably his biggest nightmare.
Okay.
Yeah, always was. I was always the guy who would. Ed is very strong, very straight, and I would always go off to the side, and he'd have to be trying to pull me back in all the time. So it's that kind of relationship. They were like brothers.
That's awesome.
Always have been, and it's a long time.
Yeah.
So I learned so much from him, guidance-wise, education-wise. He's an extremely intelligent man and very good man.
Yeah.
And like the old thing is, like, you associate with good people.
Well, they say you become like the top 5 people that you associate with.
I don't know about that, but
yeah.
I just would follow the fact that I keep good people around me.
That's awesome. So how and why did you move into this next book, the Fly Designs? I mean, there was a kind of a 15-year period here where Pop Flies was such a sensation, what a major buzz. You continued to tie for those 15 years. You continued to be part of the shows and be part of the fly fishing industry as a tyer. And then what gave you the prompting to write another book?
No, it was just you get approached, to do another book, and there were some new things that I had just been coming up with, so there was enough of material there to make one.
Okay.
And I thought it would be a good idea because, again, for communication's sake, and the whole thing about this is that you have to put the customer first. That's just same thing with the restaurant business. The customer's first. Here, being on this side of the table, these are our customers. They are first. That's the reason we're here. So they have our time, undivided attention. You answer all the questions that they ask you. You go out of your way to make sure that they understand. I try as my damnedest to remember everybody, because that's important. I like to see people and let them know that I remember them from the last time that I saw them.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know where
it's a relationship,
but it's very, very important. And the fly tying stuff, where that is, it's just like anything else. There's an evolution to what you do, and new things come along. So you want to communicate. And again, you use these books and articles and things, videos, to illustrate, again, so that they can take it home with them. Okay, so that they can refer to it, they can learn from it. And if that learning enriches their sport, then it's a success. So we got some new flies in here.
Yeah, the beast. Look at this thing.
Well, don't forget, Pop Flies ended kind of with the bucktail deceiver.
Right.
This book basically will pick up from the bucktail deceiver, the 3D fly, and then go to certain unique variations, of which the beast is one.
The beast.
The beast is a big hollow fly. That's what it is. This is here. Okay? Now, Again, like any design, it's never done. Now these beast flies here, now we're doing here with shanks, these spines,
Right.
kind of developed by Blaine Chocolate.
Yep. Articulated.
It's articulation is what's going on these days. So this really was very helpful for the popularization of this fly too, is because to learn how to tie on mono is difficult. It's something new. They'd have to find something extra to do. This way here, when you get these articulating spines, then it's just like tying on a hook shank. So it's nothing new that you have to learn. All you got to do is clip these things together and you're good to go. So that's, again, this book now illustrates at least the beast.
Yep.
And then it has other style stuff. Then it also has the new
Bucktail
acrylics.
deceiver.
Yep, bucktail deceiver. Again, that's picking up where pop flies left off.
Yep.
And then it gets more refined and more defined. Then there's more involved discourse about bucktail and understanding bucktail itself. Different ways to preen it off of a bucktail rather than cutting and throwing away all the short hairs. You can maintain those short hairs on the bucktail if you preen it the right way. And that's all illustrated in there.
That's the fly designs.
Fly designs, yep.
So I was reading in one of your books that Paul Jorgenson was one of your original tying mentors.
Oh yeah.
Paul Jorgenson.
Paul was the first one to see this fly. I used to hide it because people laughed at it. I mean, it was a big source of fun. Oh yeah.
They would laugh at you for making those big flies?
Yeah, trying to make. How do you cast that thing?
Well, he was a Catskill guy, right, Paul?
Yep. But we were tying in Ocean City, Maryland, at a table one time, and he said, "What are you hiding over there?" So I said, I got this fly. Everybody laughed. I don't want to. You really want to see? I want to see that. So then when he saw it, he immediately said, "Are you kidding me? How did you do this?" And I told him. He stood up and went and got Lefty.
Okay.
Goes over to Lefty. Lefty comes over, sees that. He shakes his head and he says, "All right, I got to go get Boyd." And I was talking about Boyd Pfeiffer.
Yep.
So Boyd came, took a bunch of pictures. I made him a couple. Took him home. He did some pictures and he wrote about it in the Washington Post back in about maybe 73 or 74.
Wow.
I forget when that was. But that was that early 70s thing.
I could see this happening. All right, hold on. Paul's like, hold on, I got to go get Lindsay. Okay, hold on, I got to go get Boyd. And everybody's going to get one more person to show this to.
And I'm trying to figure out what in the world is going on.
What did you do?
So then on the other side of me, I had Charlie Waterman.
Okay.
And we're sitting at their time for the Saltwater Fly Rodders of America booth there. And he was also another one. Oh, my goodness. He said, I think we're seeing something here.
That's neat.
And that was what I recall of that. And then, again, it went into Boyd's court, so to speak, the Washington Post. That was the first time any of my flies had ever been written about.
Paul Jorgenson actually gave me a personal tour of the Catskill Fly Fishing Museum right around that time period, about 2000. And what an interesting guy. I mean, what an amazing fly tire.
Oh, yeah. Well, this year thing was in the 70s when we were in Ocean City, and then I would go to his house in, just next town over from where Lefty lived in Hunt Valley. Mm-hmm. And so I went down and stayed with Paul. Went down into his fly tying room down the cellar, which was like a den for us. It's like
the man cave of fly tying.
Oh my goodness! And I got the chance to sit and tie in his chair and everything.
Wow!
And he taught me how to whip finish. I did not know how to tie a whip finish. I would just do overhand knots and then glue the hell out of it.
Whoa!
So I still whip finish this by hand. I don't know how to use a machine. I mean, a tool to make a whip finish.
You can make those big, beautiful things.
It came from Paul. 1, 2, 3. That's all he says. You don't need any more than 3 loops or 3.
Yep.
And I said, okay, so that's how I do it.
He was more of a traditional tire.
Oh yeah, very,
like
very
those
good.
Catskill dries.
But he was traditional, yeah, but he was also innovative.
Okay.
He stayed within that sort of criteria, that discipline. But he would add his
little flair.
Yeah, that's what he was known for too. Is that he was very innovative. He would do new things and different things. But I think his real claim to fame was the way how precise everything he did was, unlike anybody else.
Paul Jorgenson. A lot of our listeners may not know Paul.
So I'm glad we're kind of remembering
Yeah, it was
Paul.
years later where you're talking about when he was at the Catskill thing.
Yeah.
He was living there in Roscoe. Mm-hmm. And I spent a lot of time in that little bungalow of his. Oh, God. A wonderful time. It was good man.
Fishing the beaver kill?
Yeah.
The Willowee-Mock?
Yeah, I remember one time we would go up there to Downsville and stay there with Larry Duckwall at his old football coach's house. And we would call Paul. We had a lot of guys come in from all over the country to stay there for a week. And then we'd get in touch, obviously, with Paul. Paul said, oh, you just got the word where they just let the trucks out. So we go in there, my God, it was like catching fish in a barrel. But it was all about guys getting together. Again, that's the big deal about any of these sports, the fly fishing especially. It's all about camaraderie. Mm-hmm. That's the big thing you don't want to miss. You're going to learn how to tie flies. You don't have to learn how to tie flies. You be a good catcher. You don't have to be a good catcher. You don't have to be a good fisherman. But if you continue to hang with other different guys, and you can experience the real good times by just your friendships.
It's like a big family.
It is.
It's like in your friendships.
And that Paul was big on that, too. He was quite a humorist.
Yeah.
A very great wit he had. So they were special times.
He was, what was his background? He was European.
Norwegian. Somewhere up
Jorgenson.
Jorgenson, yep.
Jorgenson.
Paul is P-O-U-L, not P-A-U-L. Paul Jorgenson. Paul.
Neat guy.
So, yeah, very special.
Wanted to close with a little bit of technique because you are the master surf fisherman. I mean, everybody knows you're a legend in the sand and surf casting for big striped bass with the fly. So when you hit that beach, it could be a long stretch of beach there. Mm-hmm. You get your fly rod, it looks like a giant ocean. How do you break that down? What do you do when you hit that beach? Where do you decide to start?
The easiest thing to do is first off, just think of change. Right away, the one thing you can't deny, the first thing you see that's different is where the sand meets the water. Boom.
Change.
Fish it. It's change. All of a sudden you look down the beach and you see there's white water over here, there's no white water over there. Oh, there's that white water again over there. And again, another gap. You fish these, they're changes. You fish all these changes or the edges of these changes. You see different watercolor. One's green, this is dark green. Fish that edge where they two meet. Investigate, fish those areas. Any kind of change you fish. That change could be different depth of water where they'll hold, or it could be bait fish, or it could be a school of fish itself. So anything that's irregular, that's where you try to fish. But initially, you go there on a high tide, calm day, the only thing you're going to be able to see pretty much is the sand meeting the water. So you stay and walk and you do that. You also look at the beaches where you're walking. I'm just trying to get the basic stuff here, is you can walk the beach at night, not even look at the water, or any time of the day, not even look at the water and know if the water is shallow or deep. If I'm walking south to my left, the water is deep here because the beach is sloping downward. As I go forward of that, keep going south, all of a sudden, now that angle into the beach of the sand starts to flatten out a little bit. There's your sandbar. So that's how you can read where the deep water is and the shallow water is.
So read the land.
Read everything. Read where it meets. But you can also tell by the look of the land, the slope of the sand. So there's a lot of things. But then again, you don't look at the water only. You got birds above. Okay, you have all water surface activity. So that's how you investigate. But the first thing is, I would say to anybody, fish wherever you see a change, current change. See white, you see foam on the water or something is water current's going this way, and then it's not moving out here. There's an edge. Fish these currents.
Well, that's the other thing I want to talk to you about is currents, but tides. Huge impact on how you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If you're successful.
Well, generally saying, as long as you have moving water, it's time to fish. Once it goes slack, it's time to go get something to eat for yourself. Just find water that moves. Water carries the bait to the fish. The fish will, generally put themselves in a position that everything comes to them. Not 100% of the time, but that's a good thing for them to do. And that's a good thing to follow. What I do is I like an outgoing tide. Seems like outgoing tide moves more than the incoming tide does.
Outgoing.
And it's drawing. It really seems to rile things up. I like that.
Outgoing,
There's
yeah.
a pull. The other one is sort of like a build. High tide builds, where low tide pulls.
And that pull is helpful for the...
Again, current, moves the sand, unearths crabs, fish, bayfish, whatever.
Interesting. What about baromic? Does that factor in?
Yeah, it's kind of technical. I don't get too technical. I live there.
Yeah.
You know, and it's come to me. It's just, I know if the fish are around, fine. If I got time to fish, you go.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Don't ever come under the impression that you know everything that's going on. Because as soon as you say, oh, no, wind's out of the southeast, it's going to be grassy, there's not going to be any fish today. That's when they show up.
Interesting.
So don't think you can ever get them down 100%. If you got the time, go.
Lunar?
Nah, no big deal here.
No?
Yeah, the guys got all kinds of things.
Full moon,
no
moon.
I wait for them to tell me about it.
I'm going
I don't
fishing.
put too much. I don't keep a log. I don't do that. I just go down. I can look at the water. I got 4-wheel drive, so we travel a little bit. And if it's not there, nowadays, you don't have to know anything. Just get on social media.
Yeah, see what's
Or
hot.
you get on the phone, the cell phones. It's really kind of ridiculous, but that's the name of the game nowadays. So they'll tell you where everything is if you got good enough friends.
So you're riding your 4-wheel drive right on the beach? Which beach?
Island Beach State Park, mostly. Yeah, that's my home waters.
Yep.
You know, these guys will travel a little bit, but I'm not really much into that. I would be when I'm younger. I'm 70 now, so I don't really do too much of that. I just stay local.
Time of year is spring and fall? Or?
Spring and fall most, yeah. Summertime for us here in Jersey is really not a very, very productive time.
Fishermen
there are
moving.
spots. The good fishermen will find fish, but the regular guy is going to have to work real hard to find it because we're like a restaurant on the Parkway.
Yep.
They're good for transit going through along the Parkway, but not too many people are going there from mainland.
Right.
You know, and these fish are coming up, going to Massachusetts or Maine, then they're coming back down to go past the Chesapeake or whatever on the way down in the spring or the fall.
Sure.
So we're just a rest stop.
Love it.
All right.
And then flies, I mean, what do you usually start with? Surf candy or tractor?
No, I like jiggies. You get this here, you can fish the fly guys are very specific in where they want to place their fly. By choice of line, choice of fly, choice of leader length and whatnot. So floating fly lines, a lot of time they're looking up. You could try that. Flies that service deceivers, bucktail deceivers, bangers to work the surface. Then with a floating line, then intermediate lines bring a fly just below the surface a little bit. And then, of course, you can do your clousers or jiggies and stuff and work more a deeper part in the surf. So you spray it all around. You'll get the word what kind of bait. You say, well, we got some sand eels, and they're about 3 inches long in the springtime. In the fall, those sand eels, if they come in, are probably about 9 inches long. And things change, but you'll get the word. Mullet season comes in September.
Yep.
So now you're fishing more surface stuff. Okay, sand eel, bay anchovy show, then you got your surf candies or jiggies or clousers. Right?
Love
it. Mullet, you have your deceivers, bucktail deceivers, silicones, poppers. So you just go by that. Know the area, find out what the bait is, and then start to use your imitations. And then you would say, okay, I got these flies. All right, now I want to fish them with either a floating line, intermediate, or sinking line. And depending on the currents that you have and the depth of the water you have, you would then find the right line, and then you might even have to go a little further and say, I can't use this fly down there. I can't get it down. The current's running too strong here. So then you say, I'll get this fly, shorten my leader, get down better, and be more successful. Because you fine-tune. The fly guy's got all different things, and always know that when you have a lot of current, as that current comes in, pushes, it'll also lift your fly. So you have to compensate for that. Shorter leaders, maybe a weighted fly.
Okay.
To hold it down longer.
That is an incredible lesson for us in surf fishing for stripers, Bob. So thank you for that. You can pick up your copy of Fly Designs at any of the fly fishing shows. We've got 4 more after this. So after this, we're going to Atlanta, and then we're up to the Northeast
for Linwood, then down to Pleasanton, which is outside of San Francisco, and then back in Pennsylvania to finish the show. So you can pick up your copy of Pop Fleyes or Fly Designs at the Angling Bookstore at any of the shows. You can pick it up. Where else, Bob? Where can somebody buy this book?
Well, you can always go online.
Yep.
That's where a lot of it is, or local tackle shops.
Local tackle shops will have it. Do you have a specific site that you can buy it on?
I don't sell anything. I don't sell flies. I don't sell books. I don't sell shirts, hats, nothing.
You tie.
I tie flies. It's all for them, and I run my restaurant. That's it.
That's awesome.
Shady Rest in Bayville.
So you can come by for some
There you go.
Fried Diavolo.
Yep.
Bob, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Fly Fishing Journeys podcast. It's been my honor to host you, and thank you for everything that you do for the industry.
My pleasure, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank
Bob.
you.